Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott. You're in the Prog Corner. Wait a second. I got to do something really important. Okay, now I'm set. Yeah, boys and girls, about 2 months ago, I did the 10 albums that changed my life over on the Sea of Tranquility with Pete Pardo. It was my first appearance on the Sea of Tranquility, and after that episode aired, everybody and their monkey's uncle kind of did a similar thing. Notes Reviews did their 10 albums that changed their life. Nathan on Shuffle, the Prog Nerd, everybody did it. So I kind of didn't want to do that. I already did it, so I changed it up a little bit. I'm doing the 10 artists, the 10 bands that changed my life. A little different criteria there, right? Because, one album can have a huge impact on you, hit you like a lightning bolt. But for you to become obsessed with a band, it takes a little bit longer, takes a little more time. You maybe need a few albums under your belt before you've got that total obsession going on. But today, I'm doing the 10. Hey, you know what? I'm going to do a baker's dozen here today. Why not? Do it chronologically. These are the 13 bands that changed my life, starting at number 1. Of course, it's the Beatles, boys and girls. How could it be anything but? The Fab Four changed everything. To me, I can create an absolute dividing line before and after Sgt. Pepper. 1967 was kind of the year where a lot of things in the musical world were shifting and changing, and the Beatles were at the forefront of all of it. I could make a case that everything I love about music came about because of the Beatles, and I probably wouldn't be too far off in that estimation. They've always been a part of my life. They changed the way I thought about music for sure, and the Beatles are number 1. At number 2, my next infatuation arrived a couple years later when my dad brought home Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2. And I became a lifelong fan, man. What's not to like about Led Zeppelin? You could make a case that if you were trying to form a perfect band, start with the singer. Who do you want? Robert Plant isn't a bad call. How about a guitar player? Well, Jimmy Page would be near the top of the list. How about a drummer? Yeah, John Bonham's going to be at the top of that list. And if you need a bass player that does everything, kind of that utility guy, the glue guy that holds everything together, man, that's John Paul Jones for sure. Led Zeppelin is a perfect band. Every album was great. They never had a bad record. I just love them. I always have. And they were the second band that I absolutely went gaga over. The third band that I fell in love with that changed my world was Chicago, man. The Beatles were kind of like my dad's band, and so was Zeppelin. My dad and my older brother were really into them, but Chicago was all mine. I kind of felt like I discovered them on my own, and I fell in love with them all by myself, and just the idea of jazz, rock being put into this context was just awesome for me. I loved them so much. Terry Kath, R.I.P. He died in 1978, one of the greatest guitar players of all time. And what a cool voice he had, too. There were 3 great singers in the band. Obviously, Terry Kath, Robert Lamb, the keyboard player, Peter Cetera, the bass player. And let's talk about a rhythm section, man. Peter Cetera and Danny Seraphim. Come on, man. Peter Cetera left the band in 1985. Danny left the band in 1990. And then you got that horn section, man. You got Lee Lofnan on trumpet, James Pankow on trombone, and Walter Paraziter on sax. He left the band in 2017, but Walter's gone, but James and Lee are still technically in the band. I think one of them tours, the other just does studio stuff, but whatever. Chicago was my band all the way up through Chicago 7. I adored everything they did. Chicago 8 was kind of cool. Couple tracks I really liked on it, but it really died off after that, and I started finding other bands, right around that same time, and at number 4. 4 and 5 I discovered at the same time, and I kind of had my world changed completely by these 2 bands. And yes, I'm going back to that epic event in 1975 when my brother came home from college, and he had a cassette tape that had Fragile on one side and ELP's Tarkus on the other. And honestly, Tarkus hit me really, really hard, so I'm putting it number 4. I just love Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Keith Emerson, man, from the Nice. one of the greatest keyboard players of all time, Greg Lake on bass and vocals from King Crimson, Carl Palmer from Atomic Rooster and the Crazy World of Arthur Brown. I was sold. I was just completely in love with this band. This was like one of the few prog bands that actually put the sex appeal forward. You know, Greg Lake with his, teen idol looks and the heart guitar, and Keith Emerson with his codpiece and everything. So, yeah, they were definitely a band for the ages, and I just absolutely fell in love with the LP. So much so that this Sunday's prog stream, we're doing a whole episode dedicated to the great Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Join us Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern. For that, at number 5, the fifth band that changed my life. Yeah, they changed it in a big time kind of way. It's Yes. First thing I heard was Fragile, obviously on that aforementioned cassette tape that found its way back home with my brother from Marquette University, where his college dorm roommate was just a freak, man. He loved all kinds of great music, and Yes was his favorite band. So this is for you. This is a shout out to the great Jerry Lakowitz. This guy came from New Jersey, moved to Milwaukee to go to college. He'd never seen a cow before. He was convinced that chocolate milk came from brown cows, but that's a whole other story. Yes, at number 5, my favorite band of all time. I discovered him in the wee hours of December 1975, and my life has never been the same ever since. I don't know whether to thank the boys in Yes or to condemn them. Who knows what my life would have been like had I not discovered Yes. It probably would have been a whole lot better. The sixth band that changed my life. Yeah, I was rummaging through a record store and I saw a copy of something called Genesis Live. And that album cover just really got me, man. Why are all these dudes sitting down? Except for the singer. He's got a mask on. He's got like a kick drum in front of him. Just insane. I had to buy the album. I had to hear what these guys were all about. I absolutely loved it from the first notes of Tony Banks' Mellotron and Watcher of the Skies. I knew I'd found a new favorite band, and yeah, Yes and Genesis are my 2 favorite bands of all time. Yeah, so now we get into the end of the 70s, and yeah, Prog was dying off real fast. So the next band that just completely changed my life was The Clash. When I heard their debut album, I'd never heard anything like it before. I liked the Sex Pistols. They were good. I enjoyed it. But man, The Clash brought more musicality to what they were doing. They brought a sense of urgency to what they were doing. The label put on their hype stickers, the only band that matters. And honestly, at the time, they really weren't that far from the truth. Joe Strummer, Mick Jones, Paul Simonon. Paul had only been playing bass for like 3 weeks when they started recording for their debut album. The band started with the Terry Chimes on drums, but in short order, they got the band absolutely perfect by getting rid of that clown and bringing in Topper Headon, one of the greatest drummers of all time in any genre. Man, do I love The Clash. Just fantastic. The next band I fell in love with was a couple years later, 1979. My dad used to go away for business for a week or so, then come back on the boat, leave us, my mom and my kid brother and me stranded in the Caribbean somewhere, and he'd fly back to Milwaukee, do a couple weeks worth of work, and he'd always come back with cassette tapes for his son, who was always thirsty for more. And one time he brought the cassette of XTC's Drums and Wires, and oh boy. Yeah, man, I just completely fell in love with this band. I loved the album cover. The artwork really spoke to me, but the music within, the angular, dissonant music, the herky-jerky stuff, I'd never heard anything like XTC before. I love them. They're my 3rd favorite band of all time. And they always will be just phenomenal. They changed everything about the way I perceived progressive music. It didn't have to be a 20-minute epic to be progressive. Thank you, Andy Partridge, for doing that to me. At number 9, we're going a little out of order here because I had, at number 9, I'm going with Rush. I got into Rush in 1976 with 2112, and then, when Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres came out, I was just blown away. But honestly, They didn't change my life until I saw them live on the Permanent Waves tour. They actually tried out Tom Sawyer and Limelight on that tour when I saw them in Fort Myers in 1980 or something like that, 81 maybe. I forget the exact year, but man, when I saw what Geddy was doing, he's singing, he's playing bass with one hand, he's playing keyboards with the other hand, he's got the bass pedals going, he's doing all this at the same time. I was just completely blown away and convinced that Rush was the greatest band of all time. I still love them, but obviously after Signals, I kind of lost interest a little bit. But man, oh man, oh man, Rush changed the way I thought about a band and how they could, be so full and so amazing live. I didn't think it was possible. At number 10, yeah, the whole punk scene going on in the 80s. I lost interest in Prog. You know how that goes. But there was one band in that nascent punk scene that I absolutely fell for, called the Minutemen. They were based out of San Pedro, California, and they were just unbelievable. A power trio of D. Boone on vocals and guitar, the great Mike Watt on bass, George Hurley on drums, and they created music like I'd never heard, like kind of a punk wire almost. Just phenomenal. They called themselves the Minutemen because their songs were political, and they were also kind of around a minute long, too. Man, what an incredible band. R.I.P. D. Boone, one of the greatest musical geniuses of all time. When I saw the Minutemen at Flynn's on Miami Beach, there were like 50 people there, man. What a shame. What a genius. What a great band. I love them. And as the 80s progressed, I kept listening to underground music, and I was listening to WVUM, the voice of the University of Miami, back in the early 90s, and they played some band called Guided by Voices, and that was it. I was completely sold. Yeah, Guided by Voices isn't really a band as much as an idea. Robert Pollard started this thing, and he's had, basically an infinite cast of characters flow in and out of the group over the years. So whatever era, whoever his bandmates are, it's just Robert Pollard doing his thing. And the whole idea of a 40-year-old school teacher starting a new chapter in his life, pretending to be a rock star and then making it happen, yeah, kind of appealed to me because I was about, I'm only a couple years younger than Robert Pollard, and back in the 90s, I still had delusions of grandeur, thinking that maybe I could one day, be a big old rock star myself. So Robert Pollard was my muse. Guided by Voices was my North Star. I absolutely adore them. I always will. They got a brand new album dropping next month, and the single sounds really good, so I'm excited. Album number 4,214 for those guys. At number 12, yeah, I was really trying in the 90s to get into Prog. I listened to Glass Hammer and the Flower Kings and Spock's Beard, and I liked that stuff, but nothing was sticking, man, until I heard about this super group called Transatlantic, and boy, oh boy, yeah, I checked it out, and I finally got it. I finally understood this modern prog thing, right? And ever since, I have just been a humongous fan of Neil Morse, of Roy Nastalt, of all that stuff, and it's all because of Transatlantic. Honestly, I don't think the Prog Corner would exist without Transatlantic, so thank you, Mike Portnoy, Pete Travawas, Royna, and Neil for making the magic happen. 5 albums, 5 masterpieces. Please, guys, don't let this be the end. It would be a really, really sad day in the prog community if that were the case, but it's probably the case. And finally, at number 13, yeah, I didn't do any Italian bands because I never really, fell for an Italian band hard. I fell for the entire Italian scene. So that's where this differs from, albums that changed your life versus bands that changed your life. There were no Italian bands that changed my life, but I'll tell you, there's a Norwegian band that absolutely has changed everything for me, and they go by the name of Wobbler. Oh, my goodness gracious. What a band Wobbler is. 5 albums, 5 masterpieces. Just a huge, huge fan of that entire Norwegian scene, and it all started with Wobbler for me. From there, you go into Tusmork and Jordsjo and the Chronicles of Father Robin and all the other amazing stuff going on in Norway. But Wobbler, man, just changed my life in a big, big way. How you could do retro prog and still have your own personality, still have your own charisma and your own Norwegian characteristics to what's going on. Wobbler's just awesome, man. You know what? All 13 of these bands I mentioned are awesome. That's why they made the list. They're the bands that actually changed my life for sure. What are we doing the rest of this week? Well, I promised you guys a review of the new Scion album, Pictures from the Other Side. That's coming this week. Also, the best of 2010. Yeah, we're going back to the Prog year in review. I kind of got stuck on after 2011. I hadn't done one in, it's been almost a year. So that's really exciting. I didn't think 2010 was good, but going back, it's actually a really, really good year. So that's going to be fun, talking about all those records. We got the brand new Moon Safari over the weekend, and I can't stop listening to it, so we'll do a review of that soon. And also, next in my rankings series, we're going to be ranking the albums of Chicago. That's for Gray Ever, who's been requesting it for a while. And I love Chicago. We talked about him here, so I might as well just make it official that we are doing ranking the Chicago albums next. Anyway, I love you guys. Peace in the Middle East. You know I mean it. You know I mean it. Don't pick sides, man. Pick the side of right. Both sides are right. Both sides are wrong. We are all people, and we are all prone to making bad decisions and bad mistakes and stuff like that. So let's just be smart about this whole thing. Let's pray for those good people on both sides that they can resolve this thing. Because we don't need World War III. We really don't, man. We absolutely don't want that. We don't want war with Iran and it just could get real messy. So let's just pray that calmer heads prevail. Free Tibet, and God save the king. God save Chucky the Third. Yes, indeed. That son of a gun needs your saving. So let's go. Save that boy right now. I'll see you punks tomorrow. Peace.